Hey everyone, Tanner here, and I'm back again with a few updates and some new stuff. To start, let's take a look at the terrarium in an aquarium. I know a lot of you guys have been wanting to know about this, and I showed it briefly in last week's video, but let's take a closer look right now. If you remember, we set this up back in July. As you can see, the aquarium aspect of the build is doing quite well. The terrarium, on the other hand, not so much. Early on in the terrarium's life, I could tell that it was going to require more maintenance than usual to survive long term. Unfortunately for the terrarium, my fiance and I purchased a home shortly after it was built, and anything other than minimal maintenance was put on hold. And as you would expect, I have to do a pretty substantial water change to even get to the terrarium. In addition to that, I only do water changes on this tank about once a month or so. Otherwise, I just top it off with clean water. In other words, the terrarium needs far more upkeep than the aquarium, and this is where you come in. I need your help to determine the future of this setup. The build itself was viewer driven, so I want your help to decide how to move forward with it. Now keep in mind that the aquarium isn't going anywhere. I really like how it's growing in, but it does need a good trim and some general maintenance. What about the terrarium though? Well, we have 4 options that I can think of, unless you could come up with something better. The first and most obvious solution is to just redo the terrarium. I really like the idea of having a terrarium in an aquarium, and I know that if I were to keep up with it, the terrarium would last long term. However, I honestly don't like maintaining it. It's not that it takes a long time, it's just somewhat tedious. I also think that it will be a pain to redo the terrarium while the aquarium is set up. Another option would be to remove everything from the jar, leave the lid off, and turn it into an extension of the aquarium. We could aquascape and plant the inside of the jar. I think this option would be pretty neat, and it would add an additional dynamic to the aquarium. How cool would it look with the inhabitants going in and out of the jar, almost like entering a different world? The third option is to do the same thing as the second option, but seal up the jar with the lid and turn it into a sealed aquarium or ecosphere. I'm not really too crazy about this idea either, but I knew that if I didn't mention it, you'd all let me have it down in the comments. Lastly, we could remove the jar altogether and replace it with some more sea stone or a piece of driftwood. Of the options, I probably like this one the best because of how well the aquarium is doing. No doubt, it would also be more aesthetically pleasing without the jar inside the aquarium. However, I suppose doing so would defeat the entire idea behind the original build. Seriously though, let me know down in the comments what you think I should do. There's so many ways this could go, and again, I'm curious as to what you all think I should do. Most of you commented on Instagram saying that I should just redo the terrarium, but my vote is to make it a dedicated aquarium. Because of how well this aquarium is doing, I think that I want to stray away from the experimental stuff and simply enjoy the environment that's unfolding. Enough on that though, let me show you something else I did over the week. I decided that I was no longer feeling the layout of the animal room. Originally, this is not at all how I wanted the room set up, but one thing led to another and I was pretty much rushed to get everything in place. So early on in the week, I decided to move everything around until I got a more ideal setup. Now I know what you're thinking, you just flip-flopped a few setups, you hardly changed anything. Although that may be true, this setup is more ideal for a number of reasons. Most notably is that the use of the space is much more efficient. For example, this area back here is a lot less crowded now, which is great because it allows for better viewing of the tanks. It's also better for my plywood enclosures because they aren't crammed into the corner of the room. In other words, they are more of a focal point, which is what I wanted them to be in the first place. I guess I should also mention that all of the setups to the right of the plywood vivarium are eventually going to be replaced with more permanent setups like the 40-gallon rack. While on the topic of the 40-gallon rack, you can see that I finally got a chance to start working on MJ's setup. It only has a background and some hardscape elements right now, so there's still a ton of work to do. Regardless, it should be done in no time, and you'll see why shortly. I'm also working on finalizing the rack itself. I cut these boards here a while ago to cover up the light compartments. However, I never got a chance to stain them or anything like that until recently, so within the next couple weeks I'll have this rack completely finished and hopefully we'll have most of the setups done as well. I guess while we're talking about MJ's setup, I'll show you some new stuff that I got. As you would expect, I'm going to create his setup with live plants. I've been dragging my feet on this one for a little bit, but I finally decided, hey, I gotta get these plants going so I can get him into his new home. On that, a lot of you guys always ask me where do I get my plants, and the short answer is that I shop around. I buy plants online, from local nurseries or stores, and even trade shows. So really, I'm just opportunistic about it. If I see a plant that I like, that I think is going to work, then I buy it. It's as simple as that. Anyways, I went and placed an order for some plants on Glass Houseworks, which is a great spot for plants. They have a lot of plants that you won't readily see elsewhere, which is definitely a selling point for me because I like to get unique plants that aren't budget breaking. I should add the disclaimer though that these plants are not sold or grown for the intent to be used with animals. Neither are a lot of other plants that we get though. As long as you clean your plants before use, you should be alright to use them, and honestly, regardless of where you get them, you should be cleaning your plants anyways. There are a lot of ways that you could clean plants, and I could go on, but I don't really want to get into the specifics in this video. Enough on that though, let's look at the plants. You may be thinking that some of these don't look like they'd work with a bullfrog. If you thought that, then you're correct. A lot of these plants are actually from my other setups, like this jewel orchid. I've been trying to gradually add orchids into my collection, and this one is no exception. They do very well in vivariums, so I think it will feel right at home in the 180. A lot of the other plants will also be going into the 180, which means it will be even closer to being complete, or I should say as close to complete as it ever will be. These are living works of art that are truly never complete. Within the next few weeks, I'm really going to go around the room and fine tune all of my setups. Everything is looking pretty decent, but I want to potentially remove plants from some setups and add plants to other setups and really just kind of lock in on what I'm doing here. While on that, I'll tell you about some schemes that I have for the 150 gallon cube aquarium. As many of you know, I have this tank stocked with 8 silver dollars. If I didn't have these fish, this would be a planted tank all day. I could of course get rid of these fish to do that, and to be honest, the thought has crossed my mind, but I don't think I would feel right if I did. So how can I get a natural aesthetic including live plants with these fish? Well, we have to go above the rim of the tank and turn this aquarium into a riparium. I'm still working out all of the logistics for it, but it should be a pretty cool project. Aside from getting rid of the fish, that's probably the best way that we could include plants and get the benefits thereof. I'm going to go very in depth about choosing various plants and how to set one up in the first place, so if that's something you'd be interested in seeing, then stay tuned. Lastly, I've got a few more aquascape type projects coming up. I'll be doing another 10 gallon setup to the right of this one, a 5 gallon setup for my newest betta, and a couple of really small projects. I'm not sure when any of that will unfold, but you can expect to see projects like that as well in the near future. Just so that I don't keep rambling on and on, I'm gonna end it there. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked the video and haven't done so already, I'd appreciate it if you'd take a moment and give me a thumbs up. Also, leave a comment about what you think I should do with the terrarium in an aquarium, or give me some ideas on future projects you'd like to see me do. On that, I thank you so much for sticking through till the end, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.